Here we go. Let me group that, save that. And that's got it. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Keep your arms and legs in the vehicle at all times till it comes to a complete stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, as part of the Jeremiah Show, welcome to It's Radio with TVs Tim Stack. Now here's the host of the show, a man whose first starring role on TV almost didn't happen until they filled his studio audience with people from a drug
Yeah, me. 12, I believe. I thought it was going to be a different story today, but I'll tell that one. So, yeah, that story is crazy. It was the show Nightstand with Dick Dietrich, which my guest was on, which we'll allude to a little bit later on. So he was very nice to do a little cameo on that show. So when we first started, you know, when you're doing a TV show with a studio audience, audiences want to come see famous shows. Like they want to come see Cheers back in the day, or the Mary Tyler Moore Show, what Friends, Seinfeld. They want to come see big stars. And so they don't want to see a show that they've never heard of. So you have to go gather studio audiences. And you hire people to go out and find them. And they'll walk along Hollywood Boulevard, you know, like homeless people, and they'll just give tickets to, hoping they'll show up for a taping. Well, the place we used to go to was a drug rehab center, and they would put them on the bus and take them to a taping of Nightstand with Dick Dietrich. The problem is these people had just gotten off crack like 15 minutes earlier. So all they're thinking about is crack. They're not thinking about my show, Nightstand with Dick Dietrich. So but ironically, they really dug it. They laughed a lot and they had a good time, except that we had to stop taping every 20 minutes because these people needed to go in the alley to smoke a cigarette. So I'd be in the middle of a great joke and they'd say, stop tape. What happened? Well, we're going to take a little break. And these people would run out to the alley. They'd all smoke cigarettes and then run back in, and we would start taping again. Anyway, that was a crazy story. Anyway,
it was pretty good. It was going really well until we got to the second verse of the same as the first, and they couldn't remember the first verse.
Oh, that's so funny. So this is okay. We're gonna do the drum roll, my intro. Okay, my guest can be heard every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the 60s station on Sirius Channel 73, which I love and I listen to all the time. We're going to talk about that. His band, Hermits, sold over 60 million recordings, 14 singles, and 7 albums, all went gold, twice named Cashbox Entertainer of the Year. Classic hits. You're going to hear some of those in the next intro we're going to do of him. I've got 17 intros lined up for this guest. Now let's do the Nightstand with Dick Dietrich intro that has a list of some of the songs. There's so many songs. So let's do that.
Thank you. Wow. Oh, wasn't it great?
Was that the intro? Okay. I thought I pulled a clip from my guest when he was on my show, Nightstand with Dick Dietrich. No big deal. I just do want to read some of the hits, though. I'm into something good. Mrs. Brown, you got a lovely daughter. I'm Henry VIII. I am. Silhouettes. There's kind of a hush. A must to avoid. And the list goes on and on. Please welcome my friend and just literally a legend in the music business, Peter Noone. Give him a hand, everybody.
I'm giving myself a hand as well right now. This is going really well.
This is going really well. So, Peter, thank you so much.
Hey, Tim, how are you doing?
Good. I'm doing great. I usually see you walking around the golf course, you literally on the outside of the golf course, and you're always on the phone talking to somebody. I know.
I made a pledge that I would do a lot of walking and do all my business while I was outside of my house.
No, I can tell you're doing business. In fact, I'm jumping to a question I had, which was, do you still produce all your events? Are you still the producer of them?
You know, not really. I've I got very, very busy. I thought
Yeah.
my agent told me, you're gonna be too old soon to do this many dates. So he says, I'm gonna put the price up, and then you make the same money, but you'll get less dates. And I got more dates. I obviously was under, supply and demand. There's a lot of 65-year-old plus people in America who want to go out again because they've got stuck at home for a couple of years. And I suddenly got really busy. So I don't produce them myself. I kind of manage them myself. I have a very easy to run organization. I got 5 fantastic people who work with me called The Band.
Yeah.
And they all do 2 things, Tim. They all do 2 things. Like the drummer only does one thing because it's really hard to play the drums and do anything else. But, the keyboard player is also, he sets up the equipment. He organizes all the pre-production stuff. One of the guitar players does the lights, and one of the guitar players does all my sound on stage, which is really monitors, because I have to explain to people, my career was over before they invented on-stage monitors, and you needed your ears to sing in tune. So all that stuff, we're living we're like in the 1970s. We're up to kind of Duran Duran. We all got a file of fax and no calendar in our phone.
I still have a file of fax.
So it's just been I run the same thing over. Well, you've seen it. The show.
It's a wonderful. Let's talk about your show, because first of all, I'm holding up. There are 6 pages of dates you have coming up. You have 36 shows, and that's just starting now. There'll probably be more between now and June. That's crazy. That's wonderful. It's wonderfully crazy. That's great.
Well, we've got totally for the year. We've got 108 so far, and that works out. We're taking May off, a bit of May off, and a bit of February off, and then they're jamming everything else in, and it's people ask me why I do it. How do I do it? They say, how do you do it? And I go, well, ask me why I do it. It's, first of all, it's my hobby. When I was a little boy, I had a fantastic record collection, mostly American records, by the way.
And who were some of the records? Like who?
Dion and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and, those sort of more rockabilly kind of sounding people.
Right.
And I even had a Conway Twitty record because we thought he was like Elvis. Yeah. And, so what happened, I had this record collection, and one day I'm in a club. I didn't go to see the band. I go to see if there are any girls. And I'm standing on one side of the room, and the bass player from this band comes up to me and he says, you're Peter Noone, aren't you? And I thought he was going to beat me up. I go, yeah. He said, do you know any of these songs? And he ran out. I said, yeah. He said, help us. Our lead singer, Malcolm Lightfoot, has not shown up, and we don't have a singer tonight. So I get up on the stage, and I knew all the songs. It was quite amazing, really. I actually knew the song. I had a lot of made-up words, but I finished the show, and at the end of it, they said, would you join the band? I said, yeah, okay. And they said, we'll have to give you a new name, though. You can't call Peter Noone. So I said, well, okay, what's it? They said, you're Pete Novak. And we became Pete Novak and the Heartbeats. And now my hobby of owning records, I would go and sing them in my style on stage. And we got to the Cavern, and, our set list had to be different from everybody else's because it was like a competition, really. You couldn't do Roll Over Beethoven because the Beatles did it really well. And you couldn't do this song because Jerry and the Pacemakers did it well. So I'd get up there and we'd sing Mother-in-Law by Ernie K, Mother-in-Law.
Which my wife thought the lyrics were watering lawns. Watering lawns. Yeah, that's a whole
better idea. But, the people nobody thought how abstract it was for this 14-year-old guy to be singing a song about his mother-in-law. And then we would go into My Boy Lollipop. And I think we were ahead of our time because, I could sing it in my full voice. I didn't have to do falsetto. I could sing My Boy Lollipop as me.
Right.
And nobody ever questioned that it was kind of odd for a boy of 14 to be singing My Boy Lollipop. Now I question it. But at the time it seemed like okay. And that band became Herman and the Hermits, and then became Herman's Hermits, and we were really popular in the north. We call it Northwest, the northwest of England, And what had happened in the northwest of England, it was like the Beatles and the Big Three and the Undertakers and Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders and Freddie and the Dreamers and the Hollies, and they all got signed. And then we were the next band that was supposed to get signed. It just happened like that. We got this Mickey Mouse to come to see us in a club that we played at a lot, and he liked the band. He liked me, and he tried to fire the band, and I refused to let him fire the band. I said, no, it's like the Royal Marines. We're all in this together. And bit by bit, we weeded out the guys who wouldn't commit to rehearsing 10 hours a day. And we became Herman's Hermits, and we went to London, and we recorded 2 songs, Your Hand in Mine, which was a song, Your Hand in Mine, Your Hand in Mine, a really bad song, but fun. And Mickey had this idea for I'm Into Something Good, which was a Carole King, Jerry Goffin song. And we recorded it in, people say, how long did you spend in the studio? I said, well, how long is the song? And
were you paid
we
for your own recording time?
It was what we did 1 takes in those days. It was the way Mickey wanted to do it. He recorded moments in music.
Right.
And it's totally brilliant, really, absolutely brilliant. And the only thing he ever said in the studio was, I don't believe you. Which is, so if I was singing like Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter, you go, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
So we start again. And that went on, and we would go in the studio, and we always had fun in the studio until we didn't. But it was always fun, like Henry VIII, we go in there, we need a follow-up to Mrs. Brown, you got a lovely daughter. And Mickey said, well, anyone know that song, Henry VIII? I go, oh, yeah, my granddad used to say, I said, to tell this story, like my grandfather, when he'd have one drink, a rum and peppermint, he'd get on the piano. He didn't play the piano, he'd get up on the piano, and he'd sing, I'm Henry VIII, I am, any old iron, any old iron. So we get in the studio, and Derek Leckenby, the guitar player, he slams like a Chuck Berry lick on the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And Barry Whitman comes up with that and we start to record it. And what we used to do in those days, used to say chakalaka laka chakalaka in the breaks, because big bands did that, and all our dads were in big bands. And I said second verse, same as the first, not knowing that I was actually singing the chorus. And nothing rhymes with chorus anyway, so second verse, same as the first, was good. So and then it finished, and we go da 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 da, yeah. And Mickey Mouse says next.
Wow. So you've talked to me before about like that time, and you sort of got the impression like it was a way to make money. Like these, like the Beatles and Jerry and the Pacemakers, these guys were making money that you in your town could never dream of making. Like it was like a way to get out of there.
Well, the whole thing was that, everybody in the culture that we came from, when you were 15, you had to either commit to higher education, go to college, go for your A levels, and go for your, you needed 5 O levels, and then you could get 5 A levels, and then you could go to university. You had to earn it but by knowledge to go to university. So you needed French and math, you needed 5 A levels to get in a university. And I was like 14, and I was in this band, and I was also a window cleaner, because you could do it. All you needed was a chamois leather and a ladder, and you could go and knock on people's doors. You want your window clean? We'd get the corners. You get the corners, and I was a window cleaner, and I sold programs at Old Trafford football ground, Manchester United, that as people went in, they all bought a program.
Yeah.
So I had like 9 jobs. And then one day we were in the van going to work, and I remember exactly, we played at Urmston Football Club, which is near Manchester. And we played it, and we got paid £4. And, we paid the gasoline for the car. It's called petrol. And we had enough to stop at a chip shop on the way back. And we couldn't get fish and chips, but we got chips.
Yeah.
And as I was eating the chips, I thought, I'm a professional musician now.
Playing for
we could probably do this. And then, Tim, this is great.
Yeah.
I was in my grandma's house rehearsing with this guy, and we heard a band tuning up somewhere in the distance. You know, there were lots of, every street had 5 bands in it in those days, groups that were called beat groups.
Yeah,
and we could hear the band, and we crossed two fields, like a styling over a hedge, and through the 2 fields. And on a little stage, 6 inch and maybe 1 foot high, were the Beatles tuning up. You know, 1, 2, 1, 2. And they started to play. And the guy standing with me, who was the guy we were rehearsing for, he said the magic words, "We're fucked."
Okay, we're gonna bleep that, but yeah.
Yeah. But I have to say the magic words. You know, he thought that the Beatles were so far ahead of where we were.
Right.
That he didn't have any aspirations, as they were called. He quit. That was enough. That, oh no, I've never been able to play as good as Paul McCartney. I'm a bass player. I mean, and look, the bastard, he sings too.
Yeah.
Because he'd come for "There were bells on a hill," you know, all that.
Yeah. And they're good looking too. So I got to plug some of your stuff, folks. I promise you, if you get a chance to see Peter's show, I went last year in Agora. It's so fun. I got to say something. Either you're an incredible actor, or, which I think is the case, you really still have a great time performing. Like I think the DNA kicks in on you and something else takes over, because it just comes off like you're still having so much fun. Am I right?
Well, yeah, that's not acting. I mean, I really do look forward to each one, and they're all totally different and unique. You know, I do not have a set list. I refuse to get locked into that and then.
Right.
So I kind of look around and see how I feel, and then I sometimes do a ballad that I don't, and I like to tell stories.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, you know, just to make it fun, and I truly am. When I sing, I'm into something good. You know, woke up this morning feeling fine. I always open the show with that song. That's the only set list.
Right.
And I actually become that kid in the studio. I think I was 16 at the time. I try to relive the studio thing, and you know, it's great if you've got a spotlight, because you can get into it. You know, theatrically, you can get into that moment and visualize yourself in another place. And you know, it's nice. 50 years, it's maybe 60 years ago, nearly, that recording, but I'm able to do that. And the other ones are just great fun. They're just great fun to sing. Tim, I never ever recorded a song I didn't like.
No, I believe it, but I'm telling you, folks, it's such a professional, fun evening. The other thing I got to say about your show is, I think one of the reasons why you look really good. Like you're in shape, you look great, your hair is really good. I think people go to the show, people like me think like, oh yeah, I must look good too. No, I don't look good. I don't. No, but because Peter does, I must. So, but it's a really great show. Go to peternoone.com. All the dates are on there. You're all over the place. You're in Vegas, you're in Illinois, you're down in San Juan Capistrano, Texas, Schenectady, New York. Just go there and check out the dates. He's also on Instagram and Twitter at Peter Noone, at Peter Noone. So we're going to take a break right now. We're going to come back. I do want to talk about we're going to come back with a clip, which is the 15-year-old kid, because you've told me this story and I want people to hear it. We'll pick that up on the next side. It's Radio with TV's Tim Stack. We'll be right back. So now,
I think your clip was short. I looked at it over there, so we can expand it for all those credits. If you want to play that, we can fix it.
I'll go back and re-find it. Sorry, that might have been my bad. So now we're gonna do the song, and then
Songs will be in the commercial, so you don't even need to. Your stuff is just go like you.
Okay, so we're gonna play. The next one up is that clip from the Ed Sullivan Show, I believe.
Well, I'm gonna play it for you.
Huh.
This is what I pulled from the link you sent.
This is it.
All
Must
right.
have been crazy with all those screaming fans.
Yeah, we're about to talk about that.
Here we go.
Now from Manchester, England, Peter Herman Noone.
Peter Herman Moon. He got the name of everybody in the band wrong.
This is
Peter Noone. Peter Noone is my guest. It's Radio with TV's Tim Stack. First of all, I got so much to say about that. I also want to say, when you go see Peter live, that song, and I think I've told you this. I told your daughter this recently. I saw her at a party. That song is so beautiful. It's a beautifully written song, and you do it acoustically in concert that makes it even more beautiful. It's a wonderful song. You think, back 60s poppy music and all that. No. That's a really great song. It speaks to a kid, an innocence of a kid, and it's wonderful.
Tim, when we created it, I would dress up as a young, I mean, I was only 15 anyway, but I would be 14 and I would go up to the girl's house and knock on the door, and her mother would answer the door.
Right.
And that makes it all work for me. I can still do that, otherwise it kind of a little bit straight. If I couldn't do that Stanislavski thing, then I would not be able to sing that song, because it's like Chester. It's wrong. Mrs. Brown, you got a lovely daughter. How old is the mother already?
She's 100.
So, yeah. So, I've always managed to be able to make that a special song, as if I'm singing it to this girl's mother and giving compliments. And he's been given the elbow. She doesn't want to see him anymore. It ain't no good to pine. What a great line.
Oh, it's great.
What a great line. Nobody even knows what pine is.
So that clip was from an appearance. I don't know if it was your first appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. I do remember the next day as a kid. I remember everybody watched the thing about the Ed Sullivan Show was the world watched the Ed Sullivan Show. There was one thing. There were other channels on, but nobody watched anything but the Ed Sullivan Show. So everybody, that's what people talked about the next day was Herman's Hermits. Like, oh my God, those guys were great. But I really urge people to go on YouTube and find that clip of Herman's Hermits being introduced by Ed Sullivan, and then seeing your face, because it's a combination. To me, this is just my reading. It's a combination of, I can't believe this is happening. Like, there are these girls that are screaming. I'm just imagining from your point of view, girls that are screaming, we're from Liverpool. We're on the Ed Sullivan Show. This is unbelievable. And then you perform a great version. You do the song live, and it's great.
That was the good thing about Ed Sullivan, that we didn't really know much about it. And we kind of negotiated to be on the show. We're not really sure who is he and all that. They said, yeah. And they said, well, I said, who's on it this week, for example? And they said, the Four Seasons. And I go, oh my God, the Four Seasons are on it.
Yeah.
So, and when we did Henry VIII, Henry VIII we did the next time we were on. And we did Henry VIII, and we went back to the hotel. We used to stay at the City Square on Lexington Avenue in New York.
Yeah.
And we stood on the top of that outdoor garage. It was like a garage on a roof. And me and Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Tom Jones and his manager were standing on that roof to look at the thousands of boys and girls singing Henry VIII on Lexington Avenue. That's blocking the traffic. And
you're 15.
I'm probably much older, but I'm 17 by now.
It's unbelievable.
No, 16. Yeah. So, and it was just great. And you see, what is special about the moment for me is that we all knew each other and we all shared the same kind of musical camaraderie.
Right. People
didn't need to like your music to like you. It was not. We were all guys from little tiny. Tom's from Pontypridd. It's like they got a tree this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we lived in these little. But when you would meet people, we would share the glamour of it all. And Tom Jones's manager says the magic words to Tom Jones. That's the power of television.
Yeah.
With his Welsh accent there. Look, see what TV did. That stupid song, I'm Henry VIII, I am, and there's like 1,000 girls in the street singing it, looking up here. And Mick and Keith have got Satisfaction ready to go. That's their new record.
It's unbelievable. So, but you told, in fact, when you were on Nightstand, you told me a story that I never forgot. It's Ed Sullivan, because I just love the Ed Sullivan Show. Everybody did. But Ed Sullivan took you to church. that he suddenly
it was great.
insisted on you going to St. Patrick's Cathedral with him, right?
Well, it was an odd thing because, you know, he said to me, you're a Roman Catholic, aren't you? And I go, yeah. He said, meet me tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at Delmonico's. I think he lived at Delmonico's. It was like on Park Avenue there.
Yeah, over in the 50s. Building. Yes.
Yeah. And we walked. And, you know, he was the biggest star in the world to me. Because
he not just to you, to everybody. I mean, he was at Sullivan.
Yeah, but think about it, in New York. And he walked along the street in New York and nobody stopped him because he was going to church. You know, they only stopped Sophie Loren in those days, remember? Right. The only person who couldn't go anywhere, couldn't go to a restaurant, was Sophie Loren, or maybe Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, if they were both together. But he was able to walk and people had maximum respect for that guy. Right. And I'm like all dressed up, like I got my stage suit on. You know, we had 2 sets of clothes. We had the ones that we wore on the road and the ones that we wore on stage. So I put my stage clothes on and walked along the thing. And, you know, I had to pretend. When they all went down for the genuflection, I was like always a beat behind, you know, watching quickly out of the corner of my eye. Oh, they're going down for that one.
That was me in church too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it, you know, and
go to church.
You know, it's like my mother would mime all the words to the hymns until it came to Hallelujah.
So you started talking about like some guys, you know, the Stones and the Beatles and all that. And again, I just can't emphasize enough. Peter Noone, Hermits, like in the thick of the British invasion, which was so unique and so crazy, especially for an American kid. It was all very exotic. These albums would show up and Meet the Beatles and the Zombies and Jerry and the Pacemakers. Is there somebody like from that whole British invasion world, like who was I know you knew all these guys really, really well. Was there one in particular who was like your best friend?
Not really best friends, but there were people that I got to be with more often. Like I became close with Eric Burdon because we're so unlikely team, Peter Noone and Eric Burdon. We're kind of opposites. You would think, you know what I mean? We both read a lot of books, so we had a lot to talk about. And we both drank a lot of booze, which was something that we could talk about. and you know, recently, so he was my, we both were signed to Mickey Most, the producer. And he didn't like Mickey Most at all. And I did like Mickey Most. Mickey Most and I, sounds like Mickey Mouse, doesn't it? But Mickey Most and I had a connection. When I first met him after when I was 15 or 16, and he was on a Rolling Stones Bo Diddley tour. The Rolling Stones were unknown. It was Everly Brothers, Bo Diddley, Rolling Stones, Mickey Most on this tour. And I was impressed because he was shining in his role on the tour. And I went to his house and I mentioned that when he was on the tour, when he did his guitar solo, I was impressed because he didn't have any strings on his guitar, but he still went down on one knee and pretended to do the guitar solo. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's pretty good.
And he said, I said, so we think everybody thought you could play the guitar really well. And he said, oh, I really can. And he gets out a guitar, and him and his wife, Christina, sang Devoted to You, which was, I'll never hurt you, I'll never lie, I'll never be untrue. Just like Phil and Don. And she took the Phil part and I was like gobsmacked because it was the most beautiful, romantic kind of moment for me. And I said, and I would say in the studio, I'd say, you know, Mickey, you know that sound? I'll walk right back. And he'd go, oh yeah, this. And he'd turn the green knob, which was reverb. So we had a musical connection right from the very beginning. And he knew that people had to believe me. Otherwise, I'd just be like a boy. But, you know, Hermits were a boy band because we were boys, but we were not. We were more like the Sex Pistols than like a boy band, if you know what I mean, because we were.
Completely agree. I listened to your music and I could see people saying, oh, it's super poppy, and it's not. It's really good stuff that I completely get that comparison.
Yeah, well, you know, we felt like that because we were real punks, you know, we really were, you know. It was we had to dress up because we wanted to, but in reality, you know, we wouldn't record things unless we felt it was like right for this Herman's Hermits, you know, that there were real characters, you know, that we were created people. Herman is Peter Noone, is Herman, but it is also a creation. And when we made records, they were for that audience specifically.
Right.
You know, we didn't want to step into Rolling Stones territory. We wanted to create our own uniqueness. And Tim, think about it. Every band that made it in the 60s was totally different from the Who aren't like the Stones, and the Stones aren't like the Beatles, and the Beatles aren't like Herman's Hermits, and Herman's Hermits aren't like the Dave Clark Five, who aren't like the Who. And everybody who made it in the Kinks all had a unique thing. And we chose, we were lucky we chose it. I mean, Andrew Oldham was managing the Stones and producing them. And we hired him to kind of take care of us, to create, basically to help us create our image and keep it safe. And he was telling the Stones, you know, you got to be the bad boys of rock. Go home and read Aldous Huxley. You know, and we'd already read that. So, but and for the Stones, and we'll create this image, the bad boys of rock and roll, which they've managed to be able to legitimately keep hold of that, even though they're really nice guys. And then Herman's Hermits we're going to create this really nice boys. I said, well, we don't have to really work as hard at that, because I think we already are these same characters that we're going to play. Derek Leck can be our guitar player. His dad's a police constable on a bike.
That's funny.
He doesn't have to be any different. And you know, if Herman is the boy next door, I am that boy.
Okay, here's a couple questions I wrote down, because I was curious about who was the funniest Beatle? Like, I get they're all unbelievably talented. Was there one who was like, because I also know all you guys had a lot of fun. Was there one Beatle who's like, oh my God, that guy's, I'm assuming it's Ringo, but I don't know.
No, you know, I think but you see, people changed, you know, people changed. But when I was a kid,
yeah,
I managed to somehow run into John Lennon more than the others. I did see the others. I walked into dressing rooms and said hello and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But John Lennon was not connected to any. You see, all the other boys are marrying models and posh girls and everything. But John had a wife in Liverpool that nobody knew about. So he was kind of on the tiles. He was out every night. So I was out every night. And I think he preferred the kind of girls that I could get than the ones that he didn't want, those intellectual college girls that the Beatles had set him up for. So I would see, and he was always very funny. And I couldn't think of comeback lines quickly enough. You know, he would sit, I'd like get in the lift at the same time as them to a nightclub called the Ad Lib. And he would say, and I wasn't with him, but we arrived at the same time out of the lift, and people just guessed I was with him. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let me. I wasn't old enough to go in there.
That's funny.
And he said, the woman came over and said, "There's a 2-drink minimum." Looking at me like he's not getting a drink. And John says, "I'll have 2 Bacardis, and he'll have 2 Cokes." And he gave me one of the Bacardis, and I gave him one of the Cokes, and nothing needed to be said. And the next time I saw him, he said, "That's a nice suit, Hermit. Do they make it in your size?" See, I like that kind of
I love that stuff. That's
my thing.
And I love hearing stories like that. We're going to have more stories. We're going to take another break. We got to sell some ads here, as they still do at some places. I love that. In fact, I'll plug my show, Sprung, on Amazon Freebie, where they have commercials. But you can watch the show for free right now. Again, Peter Noone, go to peternoone.com to see his tour dates. And again, I promise you, it's a fantastic, really fun time at Peter Noone for Twitter and Instagram. And we're going to come back and talk more about your movie career. I want to talk a little bit about that. It's Radio with TV's Tim Stack. We'll be right back.
Nice. Very nice. Good quotes there.
Okay, I got 2 more people to ask you about. We'll do that on the other side.
You know, George was the funny one, but he was quiet.
That's what I just assumed. He was, yeah.
Yeah. I just did, you know, he was always very friendly and nice, but he was always busy. I think he had a really serious romance going on, and we were all kind of being teenagers.
Right.
Okay, here we go.
Carousing, kind of. Cancel it.
All over the world tonight, all over the world, you can hear the sounds of lovers in love. sight. There's nobody else, and I'm feeling good, just holding you tight.
Okay, we're back. I thought we were going to play a clip from the movie. What was the movie?
That's in a movie. That's in Mrs. Brown Who Got a Lovely Daughter.
Oh, okay. I need to write this stuff down.
No, you don't.
What was the no? I saw a clip on YouTube from a movie. It was sort of like Hermits version of A Hard Day's Night. Was it called
Hold On?
Hold on. Yeah. I love that. I love that. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and look at that. It's one of those swinging 60s movies that obviously they put girls in bikinis and they're dancing behind you. Shelley Fabre, I guess, is your love interest in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's really, really fun. But then there was this other film I saw called, and you look like you were 12, called Coronation Street.
Oh yeah, that's Coronation Street was a television series that I was in when I was about 12. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was the number one show in England.
Really?
Number show, like everybody watched it too, live television. So it was good training for live, because I would forget I wouldn't be listening, and they would pass the line that I was supposed to say. And my dad in the show, Peter Adamson, would say, "Weren't you going to be off to school soon?" "Oh yeah, I'm on live television." Living in your own, sweating into my shoes.
Yeah, no, it looks like that. There's just one little clip on YouTube, but it's really fun and really different. So I want to go back to a couple of names just to see your reaction to it, because I know you worked. Again, I gravitate towards funny people. And for some reason, I have a feeling this guy was funny in life, and that's David Bowie. Was he like? I just got the feeling like I got a feeling he's really funny. Like when he's not David Bowie, he's really funny. And I just love to hear your thoughts on him because I know you worked with him.
He's one of those people who was really different. He was always different every time you met him. He always had a different attitude. He had different personalities, which is very attractive. I met the one who was he was a songwriter, and he in a massive lawsuit, and he was broke, and he wanted to get his songs back, and we did "Oh You Pretty Things," and he played the piano on it, and he was very he said in the session, that we tried to get another piano player to play his parts, and he's this kind of guy. He said, "Well, I can only play it in F sharp." David could only play the song in F sharp. He only could play the black notes. So we started it, and we got another guy trying to learn it, and eventually Mickey said, "No, you play it." And he said, I can't play it all the way through." David, like being David Bowie, said, "I can't play it all the way through," but then he did. And then for a few weeks I would go and see all his live gigs. I was like a fan of him, and every time he did a concert, he was different. It was like I went to see a different person. And
really,
that never happened to me with any other entertainer, that you would go and see one day and he'd be, and strangely enough, so his number one idol, the person he idolized the most, was Anthony Newley.
Really?
And I knew Tony Newley. So I said to David Bowie's playing somewhere in LA, I can't remember what, and he's got a new tour called 1984. I think it was 1984. So I go and I get house seats, and David comes on. I'm sitting with Anthony Newley, my wife Mireille, and Tony Newley's wife at the time, and David Bowie comes on, and he looks a bit odd. It's this new tour called 1984, and there's like a saxophone. It was one of those saxophones that you find under the kitchen sink, a little bent stuff.
Yeah.
And some guy starts to play the intro to 1984, and Tony gets up and leaves.
Really?
I hate it. David's not even on the stage yet. I had to sit there the whole time and go back afterwards, and because he couldn't take the noise. He didn't like the sound of it, Tony. He's a really strange guy. But I couldn't tell David Bowie that he left before he came on.
No, I don't think you want to tell him that. He loved it, David. He loved it. Here's another name I wanted to throw at you. I didn't know if you had any not run-ins, but contact with her. Is Dusty Springfield. Was she a friend at all?
Yeah, what happened, our very first tour in Britain, she asked us to be on the tour, and we had a van, a nasty, smelly old van with 150,000 miles on it, and all our equipment in it. And she said, "You can use you can come on the tour bus. Just don't use the room at the very back of the bus ever." And she was so, she was the real thing. You see, Dusty knew about musicians and how we behaved. The only rules were you couldn't use the toilet on the bus, and we couldn't smoke around her.
Right.
And then we pulled into the parking lot at the Liverpool Empire, and there were 600 girls shouting, "We love," that Herman stuff, right?
Yeah.
And she said, she turned around, she was standing in front of us, she turned around and says, looks like Herman's closing tonight. Isn't that great? Because, she was clearly, she was a real diva, I mean, she really, every show, I mean, one of my favorite things, Tim, is that, if you look at pictures of like the Who on stage, you can see Peter Noone standing in the wings on the back, because I never ever did a show with anybody that I didn't stand and watch the show or go to the back and stand there, the sound guy. I've seen everybody's live show that I've played with. Once I'm standing with John Lennon, and there's video of it, which is great because you can't have stories without a living witness. So this is somebody videotaped it. So I'm standing there, and we're watching some band on stage. I can't think who it was. And people used to say, "Oh, he must own the PA or something. Somebody's not very good." And there's all that sort of banter among bands. "Oh no, he's not. He's got to own the van, and he must have pictures of the bass player with a goat." Stuff like that. All those kind of lines are going. And this band start playing, and John Lennon says to me, "Hey, Hermit, isn't this one of your songs?" And it's the Hermits on stage at Wembley, Wembley. And they're on stage and I'm not. Where is he? Where is he? And you see me come running out of that tunnel where all the football players come out, and running up the stage and into She's a Must to Avoid.
Oh my gosh.
But it was all like that. But all the setup was that we were just these boys and fans of music and loved each other. It kind of each other's music.
Well, speaking of that, you in your act, again, folks, go see him. It's really, really fun. But you sort of pay homage to songs that you should have recorded or could have recorded, and you didn't. So, tell us about some of those songs. I think there was one by Jerry and the Pacemakers, like you could have done it, but then he did it. And maybe there was a song.
Yeah, there's lots of them. We did Bus Stop first. We recorded it first, and we weren't very confident with our version of it, and we gave it to the Hollies. They were friends.
Yeah.
And once it was #1 by the Hollies everywhere in the world, we never spoke to them again. But I mean, we were friends when we gave them the song. Have a look at this, see what you think. And we had For Your Love, which was the Yardbirds hit. Yeah. Same thing. We just couldn't. We did versions of them, but we knew when we finished recording, when Mickey said next, we knew that's an album track. You know what I mean? Failed singles in those days were album tracks. Only the Beatles went in to make an album. We made singles, and failed singles became album tracks.
Did you ever have a B-side song that became a bigger hit? Did that ever happen?
Yeah, No Milk Today and There's a Kind of Hush was an A-side. No Milk Today was a B-side in America. And that's the most, No Milk Today now is the #1 download. All those streaming services. No Milk Today keeps winning.
Really? I wonder, that's interesting. I wonder why. So, were there any songs that got given to you that somebody made the same mistake? Like, they recorded it, you guys took it and made it a hit. Were there anything come to mind there?
Yeah, lots of them. I think we usually got first look at it. I mean, Lulu got The Boat That I Row, and Neil Diamond told me that he wrote that for Hermits, and it probably would have been. It probably would have been The Boat That I Row, Don't Cry No Ocean. I think we would have done a very good version of that. But Mickey had just signed Lulu and was trying to impress us, so he had this song, and Neil Diamond had written it, and that frequently happened. And I still remember I went to this meeting. They were setting up this new group called the Monkees. And I went to a meeting, and it was with Burt Shoveloff or something like that in the hills of Hollywood. And I never felt comfortable up there, with all those folky people, and it wasn't my scene. it's too much pop and too much like wannabe long-haired musicians. So folk singers, we called them in England. And I went and at this meeting, sitting there was Bobby Darin. And, I was such a big fan that I couldn't speak.
Yeah.
I was being cautious of what, I don't know what he was doing at the meeting. And they played me Daydream Believer. No, not Daydream Believer, Last Train to Clarksville, before they had the people singing on it.
Right.
And it was the two boys who'd written the song, Boyce and Hart, I think their name, who'd written the song. And they were looking for somebody to sing it. And they said, we're going to have this English guy who's like Herman, and we're going to have this guy called like John Lennon, and we're going to call it the Monkees. I said, everything's great, except that is the bad name. They'll never get in there. So it'll be like Hermits. People will think you're not a real band. And I said, well, it's not a real band.
But you became good friends with those guys. In fact,
yeah, I loved them. They were all good guys. I loved them.
Oh, there was some birthday
party
we got invited to that I did. I was our final
Coronation Street thing together.
I
lost you.
Really? That's so funny. And then he went on. He sort of stayed as an actor in Oliver and all that stuff.
Yeah, and Pickwick.
Right. That's great. Okay, we're gonna take our break. I'm talking to Peter Noone. Go to peternoone.com. See all the tour dates at Peter Noone on Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget Sprung on Amazon Freebie. This is all courtesy of producer Jeremiah Higgins as part of the Jeremiah Show. I'm so happy to be here. It's Radio with TV's Tim Stack. We'll be right back. Okay. You're all
wind up soon, Tim. I got to go to my doctor's at 2. How long have we got now?
Oh, we're going to definitely be done by 2. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah. I'll just call him.
If you have to go, go.
No, I'll finish, do the next segment and see how long it takes.
So you could.
De La Vigna at 2 o'clock. Do you think I'll make it?
Where do you have to be? At 2 o'clock?
De La Vigna.
Oh, let's just wrap it up. We'll wrap it up now and you.
We'll do another one.
We'll do another one.
Where are we at?
You're at 47.
Right.
So you filled a full hour radio.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
47. Right
So let's just call it a day after this.
Whatever you want.
No, but he's got to go to a doctor.
Yeah,
so
give him 10 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay. I just want to thank Peter Noone. We've run out of time, as they say in show business. There's just not enough time, but maybe he'll come back because there are a lot more stories I want to talk about. And I want to talk about his daughter. I'll just do that real quickly. Natalie, his daughter, who's a wonderful singer. And now she has her own show on Sirius Radio, but she also, if you listen to the 60s channel on Sirius that I do, all those voiceovers are Natalie's. She's really, really talented in that world. I got to tell her next time I see her, and she's got
you should do.
And you're a grandfather now. And anyway, a wonderful family and a crazy life you've led. I don't know who has more airline miles than Peter Noone. That's a safe bet, I think.
I think that's probably a safe bet, yeah.
People say, I saw Peter Noone on a plane. I was going to Geneva, then I was going to Canada, and he's always on that plane, so anyway, Peter, thank you so much for doing this. Really, really fun. Go see him. I promise. It's so much fun. People just have a great time. Go to peternoone.com to find out where he is, because he might be near you. Thank you again, Jeremiah, Dr. D, the engineer. It's always a pleasure to do this. It's Radio with TV's Tim Stack. Thank you, Peter. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Tim. Let's do it again. I enjoyed myself. I love talking about me.
Okay. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Take care, Tim. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you on the golf course.
See you on the golf course. Okay, Peter, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Sorry, Tim, I got a rush.
No worries. No worries. I'll talk to you.